Everybody tells you red flags are obvious. They're not. The red flag is almost never where you're looking. It's almost never in the numbers. And the person flying it has been inside your building for at least 3 years. Stay with me. If you think the annual audit is protecting you, wrong room. If your fraud strategy is a compliance checklist and confidence in your own people, close it out. This is for the one ready to understand why the red flag that cost the company was visible the entire time, just in the layer nobody trained you to look at. Here's what nobody says out loud. The red flag is never the fraud itself. The red flag is the behavior the fraudster couldn't suppress while committing it. Not a technique, not a software flag. A completely different understanding of what you're looking for and why you keep missing it. Every organization that got defrauded had access to every red flag before discovery. They just didn't know what they were looking at. Think about a poker table. Not the cards, the person holding them. A pro sits down with the best hand of the night. Full house, unbeatable, and they still do it. A chip picked up and set back down. A breath held half a second too long. The hand was hidden. The behavior wasn't. That is the entire job of a forensic accountant. The fraud is the hand. The behavior is the tell. And the tell always leaks first. Here's the number. 85% of occupational fraud, the fraud that runs inside your own organization, is committed by employees with 3 years or more of tenure. Not the new hire, the trusted one. The long timer. The person who shows up at every company holiday party. The one nobody suspects because nobody suspects people they know. Sit with that. Now. Something shows up in every fraud file that gets misread as a data anomaly. It isn't data, it's behavior. The unnecessary follow-up email. The after-hours submission on a document that didn't need to go out until Friday. The unusual warmth directed at whoever controls the approvals. The urgency that arrives 3 days before month end, every single month. Academics call this behavioral leakage. The unintentional signals produced by someone managing the cognitive strain of maintaining a deceptive act while performing a legitimate role simultaneously. I call it the shadow the fraud casts while it's still hiding. The fraud is in the dark. The shadow is on the floor in plain daylight. Forensic accountants learn to read the shadow. Most compliance teams are still waiting for the fraud to step into the light. Most organizations built their fraud detection around the transaction, the amount, the vendor, the approval. That is the completed fraud. By the time it's in your system, the fraud already happened. You're reviewing evidence. The forensic accountant was watching the rehearsal. Second number. Organizations using behavioral detection see median fraud losses 47% lower than those relying on traditional audit discovery. Not because they're faster, because they catch the rehearsal before it runs for 4 years. You're thinking it right now. Red flags are obvious. If there were real ones, someone would have already caught them. I have good people. I have systems. Wrong. Red flags are obvious after the fraud is discovered. Before, they look like a busy employee who communicates a lot, a department that's been under-resourced, and a vendor relationship nobody questioned because it's been running cleanly since before you got there. After the fraud, obvious. Before, completely explainable. That's not an accident. That's the design. The red flag you're waiting to see is specifically engineered to look like a normal Tuesday. And the person flying it organized your last team outing, made the sign-up sheet, brought the good snacks. The forensic accountant is trained to be skeptical of explanations that arrive exactly when scrutiny does. The convenient explanation, showing up on cue, that is sometimes the red flag. Here's what forensic accountants look at that most compliance reviews walk right past. First, pull the request, not the approval. Approvals get managed, cultivated, engineered over months. The request is where the behavioral signature lives. Who submitted it? What time of day? How many follow-up messages before it moved? How specific the urgency claim was. pull the last 10 high-dollar requests from your top vendor. Who is doing the follow-up, and how fast are they moving? Second, map the urgency pattern. Fraud transactions almost always carry urgency. Need this before close of business today? Vendor pulls the contract by Friday. Leadership already approved this verbally. Urgency is the mechanism that bypasses scrutiny. The fraudster didn't stumble into it. They built it in deliberately. When was the last time someone manufactured urgency around a transaction in your department? Where did that transaction land? Good. One more. Third, pull the exception log. Every organization has exceptions, transactions that bypassed normal approvals, vendors onboarded outside standard review. Most organizations log exceptions and never go back. Forensic accountants go there first, because exceptions are where fraud lives, not in the violations, in the approved ones. Pull your last 12 months. Who requested the most exceptions? Who approved the most? Are they in the same department? And if you just realized you don't actually know the answer to any of those questions, that is not a gap in your awareness. That is a feature of the fraud. It was designed to stay invisible to the people too close to notice it. First time a forensic accountant enters a fraud investigation, the organization always says the same thing. We've reviewed everything. We don't see it. Right. That's the problem. They reviewed the documentation, the compliance report, the approvals, all clean, because the person committing the fraud made sure the compliance report stayed clean, not by falsifying it, by making sure what needed to stay hidden wasn't in the category the report was designed to surface. Here's the tell forensic accountants look for before opening a single file. An AP coordinator. $58,000 a year. Same car for 4 years. Brings lunch. Over 8 months, new car, new watch, 2 unannounced trips. Stops bringing lunch, starts picking up the tab. Nobody asked. People get bonuses. 18 months later, a phantom payment scheme running for 6 years. $1.4 million extracted. The lifestyle shift started in month 7. The forensic investigator said the tell was visible by month 8. The fraud ran for 5.5 more years. Not because it was hard to catch, because nobody connected the new car to the vendor file. That is a training gap, with a $1.4 million price tag. Some of you are thinking of someone right now and already building the reasonable explanation. The forensic accountant checks first, then decides if the explanation holds. You built the explanation before the check. That's the gap. In real talk, that's the complete picture. Behavioral leakage, the lifestyle tell, exception mapping, urgency patterns. Stack those 4 lenses, your fraud exposure narrows significantly. Done. Close it out. Except, there's one thing I haven't told you yet. The thing that makes experienced forensic accountants almost impossible to run fraud past after enough time in an environment. Not a tool, not a checklist. A cognitive shift. Every healthy financial environment has friction, confusion, questions, pushback, late approvals. Human beings create friction naturally. The place in your organization where everything is suspiciously smooth, approvals return instantly. Nobody ever questions this vendor. No friction, ever, for 2 years. That's where the control has been compromised. Not bypassed, managed. Someone is quietly keeping that workflow frictionless, because friction brings attention, and attention is the only thing that ends the scheme. AI can analyze your transaction volume. It cannot tell you a workflow that should produce friction has been producing none for 26 months. That is a human read, and it changes every room you walk into once you know to look for it. Beat 1. Foreclosure. Nobody's coming to install this in your organization. No audit cycle catches the lifestyle tell. No compliance software surfaces the managed frictionlessness. You'll watch this. Agree with everything. Go right back to reviewing the transactions. Or you won't. The people who apply this framework don't just audit differently. They walk into financial environments and ask a different first question. They connect the new car to the vendor file while everyone else is still building the explanation. They are the reason fraud schemes end before the seven-figure discovery memo. That is the one who reads behavior, not just balances. That is who this was for. Look, most people who watch this gonna close it out, agree with everything, and go right back to the same audit cycle. Be the rare one who actually moves. Subscribe, because the next video explains why you can't stop scrolling, the science behind your phone's grip on your attention, how it's changing the way your brain works, and the simple shifts that can help you take control again. See you on the next video.